As always, this opening lecture is dedicated to our freshmen.
Such questions as, how shall I believe in the possibility that my mind could attain truth?
If we could but know where we are and whither we are tending, then we could better judge what to do and how to do it.
Hello, and welcome to the first ever episode of The College. I am Jordan, and today I'll be talking with Grace Villmow about music at St. John's College and its importance at the college.
I am Grace Villmow, and I graduated in May of 2020.
So walk me then, if you could, walk me through music at St. John's. What do we do? What is it like? What are some of the things we cover?
Yeah, I would have to start with the importance of making everyone at St. John's a musician. Okay. So every freshman is required to do freshman chorus, right? And that is 3 hours every Thursday morning, bright and early with, in my case, Mr. Calcabbage, but in all the subsequent years, Miss Paulman, and watching her improve and really grow into herself as a conductor has been really inspiring. And that's something that Zuckerkandl breaks down. And the opening paragraphs of The Sense of Music, he talks about how now there's this big disparity between the musician and the audience. And he talks about how musicality is like a gift. And some people have it and some people don't. And while there are varying degrees of gradation, you can't really do anything to change that. Mm-hmm. And the St. John's music tutorial starts your freshman year in St. John's course, breaking it down and saying, no, you don't just get to be a listener anymore. You have an instrument, your voice, and you're going to use it. And it always really breaks my heart when people don't take advantage of that. Mm-hmm. Even if you don't like singing, it's just you're wasting such a valuable opportunity to learn something about yourself and to prepare yourself for what's to come.
Music was always hard to wake up for because it was usually something that you were very active in. Some other tutorials or even lab, you can be kind of quieter where you can get through. But music is something that you're constantly standing up, sitting down, repeating. It is, you're active. You're not just sitting. You're in it, you're immersed, you're doing your thing. So freshman course, what do we do?
So what do we start with in freshman chorus? I think we really do start with the same things that we start with in in the music tutorial, right? Where we begin with the simple stuff, right? We learn chants, we learn folk songs, and we have a music manual and it kind of changes year to year, but there are a few basic things that we get down, and it's always a big moment. And they usually wait till, I want to say, about 2 months in to start teaching everybody Sicut Cervus.
And what is that?
Huh?
What is Sicut Cervus?
Of course. No, let nobody tell you that St. John's Forever is the school song. That's absolutely not true. Our school song is Palestrina's Sicut Cervus, which is a short polyphonic piece for 4 parts, taken from the opening lines of Psalm 42, which is loosely remembered as the deer pants after running streams, so my heart longs for you, O God.
Mm. Pretty heavy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And very true. It's really remarkable what Palestrina does. It's not just that he takes one line and stretches it out and makes repetition seem like a proper thing instead of a redundant thing. It's that he does that 4 times because there are 4 different parts, right? And all layered on top of one another. It's a hard thing to do, to sing, and not just regular singing, but polyphony, where everybody's singing something that sounds kind of similar, right? But it's staggered. There's no melody and harmony. There is no melody. Yeah. Every single line is like its own melody, except for, when they drop out for 2 measures, which happens sometimes. As a soprano, sometimes I think, when I'm resting and I'm waiting for me to come in again, I think, God, does it sound empty? Is it missing something? But it's so beautifully composed that it always remains filled in. But that's the thing about it, right? It's so hard to sing and so beautifully composed that we sound bad when we sing it. There are times that we go, yeah, that was pretty good. But if you listen to it back, and of course you should never record yourself singing, it doesn't go well. But if you listen to it back, we make mistakes. We're pitchy. The tenors are straining because, wow, is that a hard part? The altos don't know what they're doing. The basses are just yelling. I think there really is a virtue, though, in sounding bad and doing something poorly. Nobody comes to St. John's expecting to do things well, or if they do, I certainly hope that illusion is beaten out of them fairly quickly.
Yeah.
All the better, right?
That is true. I wonder then, so I've only been here for 2 years, you 4, and you've been singing the song since your freshman year. Do you know when at all Sicut became a part of the college? Like, I'm just fascinated just by, like, where did it come from? Was it a class that fell in love with it? Was it a collective group of people that were like, this is, like, say tutors? Was it a collective group of tutors that was like, oh, this is great. We need to continue teaching this, and this needs to be something bigger. I really wonder where the origin of Sicut came from.
Yeah, I wish I knew the answer to that question. I really don't. I'm thinking back to when Zuckerkandl was an honorary tutor in like the 60s?
Yeah, I believe so. It was 50s or 60s.
Yeah, he talks about polyphony in the sense of music, and uses Sicut as an example in there, but he's more focused on other things, like, the bird Kyrie and that sort of thing, which is another wonderful one to sing. But we do sing, because, a Kyrie is, that's the opening of any sort of Catholic Mass. So countless Kyries have been written because Kyrie is just, it's short for have mercy, Lord, Kyrie eleison. That's have mercy, Lord have mercy, and then Christ have mercy, Lord have mercy is at the beginning of every Mass.
Yeah. Huh. So I'm guessing freshman course is basically, this is hard, because I think the biggest thing in freshman course was getting out of your comfort zone. Because a lot of people, you begin singing, you're like, personally, I was like, I've never done this. This is something last time I sang with the chorus was in 5th grade, and it was because, like, we had to. Now I'm here, a college student, setting my first Thursday class, coming into music, and at 9 a.m. with Miss Paulman standing there welcoming us to stand and then sing. Like, I've never done that, and I just understand Sicut? Like, I don't.
I wonder if sometimes I do wonder if it is humbling by design. But I do think that it does serve to break down the whole barrier between the musician and the audience, because we are our own listeners, and in order to sing properly, you have to listen to what other people are singing. It's how you get your cues. It's how you know what comes next. What I always like to say is, if you're reading on the page what you're singing, you're already behind. But, people, because they've never done this before, they think they need to bury themselves in their music. I administer the music notation tests to freshmen sometimes. Like, I know you guys can't read music, but you still do that, because it's like a security blanket.
Yeah.
So, you're right. It is getting you out of your comfort zone, but that's not just the only virtue. In a way, I guess it does prepare you for everything else at St. John's. Having to do this thing that you've never done before and probably aren't very good at, I think is a lot like sitting down in freshman lab and reading Aristotle, the big guy, for the very first time and talking about it like you have any idea what's going on. Yeah, I like that. It's humbling.
It's and it's not like we just sing for the sake of singing. We sing also partially to prepare for performances. I believe we have 2 or 3 big performances. We have like a fall performance.
Yeah, first semester, and then usually 2 second semester.
Yep, with like the last performance we have is for Croquet Day.
Yeah.
Which is, I think that's really cool. So that's all freshman year, but then we kind of, and you were mentioning how you proctored an exam, And that's like,
Oh yeah, gosh. I hope if anybody's listening to this thinking, hey, I thought St. John's didn't have tests. It's a pass-fail sort of thing.
Mhm.
And it's just to teach you some basic musical terms. What do time signatures mean? What do key signatures mean? What are these notes? How many beats do they last?
yeah.
It,
I
it's
remember taking that multiple times.
Yeah, and some people have to, and that doesn't mean they're smart or stupid, and that doesn't mean that they're never going to be good at music and should just give up.
Mhm.
I always like to say, and I think this is 100% true, that all the technical aspects of music that we learn at St. John's, be it freshman year on the music notation test or sophomore year when we get into chords, everybody learns at a different pace, but it's all learnable. And the main reason that I see people fail to grasp a concept is that they just didn't really think it was necessary, which is always unfortunate. But, sophomore year especially, I think, is a really challenging one. Not in terms of workload, but in terms of the amount of brain power that it takes. The amount of soul power, I guess, is really what I'm thinking about. It's a very personal year, and it disappoints me when I see people kind of give up in music, but it's also completely understandable.
You touched on, so we have a little music notation exam, but we're really preparing for sophomore year, and that's where you spend your full academic year. You get rid of lab, and you take this music thing. Like, why? Could you walk me through possibly like the reason of why music is a liberal art? But what does the college think, or what do you even think that the importance of learning music for a whole year is?
Yeah, and it's that's a really tough one, right? Because I think that we could do lab that year. There is so much that we could do in lab that year, and in some ways I really do understand the argument that some people have that they think music is a waste of their time. And I took music theory in high school. I've played cello since I was in 4th grade. I haven't been singing for very long. I only started singing for my music theory class. And I taught music in Kenya, so I'm coming with that bias. But maybe if I could step outside of like my personal appreciation for music and learning about it and teaching it, and think about what I hear from seniors when they remember, oh yeah, you're a music assistant. They regret not trying harder. It feels like every year there's kind of a throwaway class. Freshman year it's math, sophomore year it's music, junior year it's language, and senior year I think it's also language. Sorry, Mr. Comnitz. I hope he's not listening. I don't think he's much of a podcast guy. And that's just the one where it's like the most people decide like I can BS this, right? And that's gonna happen at any school, anywhere, and I fall prey to it too, even though I get a lot of joy out of my schoolwork. It can just be a lot, especially when I'm not necessarily interested in everything. So, there are students who come into the music class and they sit down and they're really upset that they have to take it. And I remember being in class with them, and then I remember talking to them about it senior year when we all went to turn in our essays at the president's house. I don't remember very much of that night, but I do remember standing in a group of people and them all talking about how they wished they could remember the words to some of the things that they sang in freshman chorus because they still remember the melody. They wanted to be able to sing it with the group one more time because there's really no unity like singing with someone else. And then they talked about the fact that sophomore year is maybe the only opportunity that they're ever going to have in their entire life when they have 70 minutes 3 times a week, or one of those times is long music, right? So even more than that, they're going to have time each week to dedicate just to music. Think about that. You might never have that for the rest of your life. I guess you could take lessons for a musical instrument, but it would never be the same as taking a class. Or, you could watch YouTube videos or listen to podcasts, I guess, but it's not the same as struggling with this, with other people struggling through the exact same thing. And looking back, they realize how incredibly valuable it was. Not just because music is a great thing to study, but because in today's world, you need to seek it out. St. John's just brings it right to you.
I completely agree. I think it is something that, it, no matter if it's freshman music, sophomore music, what I'm trying to get at is it seems like the goal of freshman and sophomore music is not to study, like it's not to know music to the T. There's something a bit different. It is almost like what we do at the college, but I don't know, I just find it really interesting. And I didn't know if you had a similar idea, if you had thoughts about that.
Yeah, I was thinking about, as you were talking, I was thinking a little bit about the importance of understanding technical terms, which makes a lot of students want to hurl. Like they'd rather, and this is completely understandable, and I agree for the most part, right? That they'd rather talk about how something sounds or the way it makes them feel or how it relates to the words. So when I start throwing out phrases like cadence, or key change, or I start going, yeah, no, look at that diminished seventh chord right there, they just turn off because they think this is more technical dribble and I don't really need to think about it if I want to talk about this piece of music, But the thing is, the technical aspects of our music education are what facilitate a better conversation. It gives a term to this sound.
Yeah.
We name things, we categorize them, and that's how we learn and grow and figure out how we should think about something. So just like to get back to your question, right? I view the importance of learning the technical stuff, not because I want to know what a cadence is, but because knowing what a cadence is enables me to examine the thing more closely.
Huh.
And I think that's kind of what the music tutorial does. It says, this is a part of your life, whether you like it or not. And that's why I always like my first music audit of the year to be, okay, let's sit down for 15 minutes and talk about this piece of music that you sent me. It's always going to be a part of your life. You cannot escape it unless you go deep, deep into the woods. And even then, I guarantee you will find yourself humming or whistling if you can do that. I never could. So the music tutorial at St. John's says, yeah, okay, since you are surrounded by this and it's a part of you, let me show you how you can think about it. Like really, really give it thought. Because I can mindlessly listen to something. I do it all the time.
Like that study music that you put on.
Yeah, I can't do that anymore. It's a blessing and a curse to be able to do this in your head. But no, I can read like an eye candy book or something, like I can go back through Harry Potter and I can cruise through it and I can kind of turn my brain off and just enjoy it, and it's pleasant. I think a lot of what we do at St. John's allows us to recognize the beautiful. Okay. And that's a really difficult thing to do. It takes effort. It takes serious mental effort. And if you don't have the tools, it is incomprehensibly difficult. Mm-hmm. And we at least try to struggle with each other and say, here are the absolute basic tools. These terms are what we need.
Going through the sophomore music program myself, it was very difficult. And I didn't, at the beginning, you're like, I have to study music. It's a requirement. But then if you really like take the time and you kind of let yourself immerse within what you're doing, like let yourself just dive into this music, then something really beautiful can happen. And I say beautiful because it's like you're looking back and you're saying, like I did that. And it's almost like discipline too. I took the time and it took discipline for me to study Mozart, to study Schubert, study Bach, like all of these different, it's rewarding when you're able to say, you know what, this isn't daunting anymore. I like now, after going through the whole sophomore music tutorial, I am not afraid to go and say, I want to look at the sheet music for this song because I have the tools. And then for me, I can appreciate it better.
There's something inherently rewarding, I think, in just doing the work. Mm-hmm. And I like that I've had my copy of Bach's St. Matthew Passion for the past 3 years, and it's filled with notes that I took my sophomore year when I was exploring this piece for the first time, and then notes now, and notes from last year as well. How I take notes really depends on the tutor that I'm assisting for, because I know who's interested in what. Mm-hmm. Like reading a book again and again, you get something out of it every time. even if you're never going to listen to classical music, right? And that's the majority of what we study in the music tutorial. There's something inherently rewarding in being able to hear Bach and go, yes, I know that.
Hmm.
The influence that he and Mozart as well, it's really such a shame that we didn't get to do an opera this year. But the influence that they had on music today is so immeasurable.
Can you walk me through then what the sophomore year music tutorial is like? Like, what do we study, and how do we get to the point of or a piece of Bach, a piece of
Something as monumental as The Passion that has a children's chorus, 2 full choruses, numerous solos, and an entire orchestra?
Yeah. How do we get there?
We go from nothing to that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there are a number of components when you talk about the music tutorial, right? We have our regular meetings, and then we also have long music, which is when we meet with the 1 or 2 other classes that have music at the same time, and you sing together. So singing doesn't go away sophomore year. So if you ditched freshman chorus all of freshman year, then you're in for a tough time, buddy. And I did see that happen to a few people. One of the attendance takers was a little bit too lenient with his friends. So you're still singing, but you're also having this class. And then part of the class is having an assistant and meeting with them one-on-one. I've been a music assistant for the past 2 years, which means I've done the sophomore music tutorial 3 years now. And so not only are you taking the class and continuing to sing and doing whatever studying it is that you do for your classes, hopefully, right? Even though the readings for music tend to be very short. But you're also meeting with your music assistant one-on-one for what are called music audits. And those are typically at the assistant's discretion, and they design something like, can you identify these intervals? Or what key signature is this, and what is its relative minor? And you're meeting with them once a week. So for you, that's just 15 minutes of your time, but for them, it's 15 minutes times 14 students, which can get to be a lot, but it's completely worth it, right? Because I always tailor my audits to what we're discussing about in class or what I think we're going to discuss next. So you have a lot of opportunities to really get a grasp on things that you're not necessarily understanding. And that's why a lot of people think it's a waste of time, because they think that it moves really slowly, but that's preparation. You absolutely want it to move slowly when you're going to build up to something as big as Bach or Mozart. We would have done an opera, and that would have been huge. But what's our principal text, right? Would you say that it's The Sense of Music or the music manual?
It seems in the beginning of music, like the first semester, we rely heavily on Zuckerkandl, and we talk mainly about how he works through different types of music. And he basically gives us building blocks, and then we use those building blocks to then return to the music manual to sing, to analyze music. And then we also usually read a little bit of something from other authors. Like we had Mr. and Miss Allenbrook. We have
an essay for Mr. Calcavage in there.
We have from another tutor, yeah. We also
we have another one from Zuckerkandl. That's The Words and Tones, and Zuckerkandl's the author of The Sense of Music. But that's a good thing that you brought up about The Sense of Music, that it gives us building blocks. You know, if you think you can take AP music theory like me and then just cruise through the sophomore music tutorial at St. John's, you are completely wrong. I had to unlearn everything and then relearn it in Zuckerkandl's terms. And at first, I was extremely upset about that because I thought that I was right and he was wrong. And in many ways, that is still the case. You know, what's most important about Zuckerkandl is that you can treat him like a student. That's why we read him instead of like a music theory textbook. You can't have a conversation with a textbook. There's no way to question it without getting a definitive answer. And that's exactly what kills conversation. You always want your answer to be a yes, but, or a yes, and, or a yes, also. And that's what keeps it going.
I think the point that you just made about how you had to basically relearn music is something that happens all throughout what we do at St. John's, because I remember coming in as a freshman, and this is like for anything, my memories bringing me back to freshman seminar, like one of the few times I'm like, okay, yeah, I can read and I could talk about what I read, but it's not, you're not talking about the setting, you're not talking about the plot, you're probably not talking about like the characters, but you're talking about like these intricacies of bigger, they touch on such specific things, but they work up to such broad, big questions like, what does it mean to be alive? Like Aristotle's almost
Virtue and can it be taught?
yeah, exactly. Like Plato's Republic, like this, or even Meno or anything, like all of these different texts. But no, it's quite interesting of how you have to do that not only in music, because music is something you can study with like outside, but it's seminar, it's math, it's all these different things. Like, yeah, you can take AP Calc, yeah, you could take AP Bio, AP Chemistry, AP Physics, but no one will teach you really how to articulate the way in which you're thinking.
We had a student in our class, right, who was absolutely convinced that music is a subjective thing, and because it's a subjective thing, it's pointless to talk about. We'll never get anywhere because we all have our own opinions, and because it's an opinion based on some sort of like personal aesthetic appreciation, we'll never be able to get anywhere. And that was his stance. And so because he held that stance, I did one of my favorite music audits ever. I made it up based on experiments that we did in class, where I took a popular simple melody, When the Saints Go Marching In, and I played it on the piano. But then I would change the final note or the final phrase, I guess, to make this note make sense each time I played it. And I'd have the student turn around and they'd have to tell me what dynamic quality that is. And of course, dynamic quality is like an invention. Zucker-Connell made it up to describe this thing that we hear that's touched on in music theory in the form of chords and Roman numerals. But Zucker-Connell kind of makes it its own thing. He bases it on the 12-tone scale, or really the octave, right? 8 tones is what we're going to be typically listening for in any sort of piece. And I did that experiment, right? And I brought him in and I sat him down for his audit and I said, listen, if music is truly subjective and you don't listen to Western music very often and don't really have a preference, then I can end this on the 7, which is a very tense dynamic quality according to Zucker-Connell, and you'll be perfectly satisfied and won't want me to play the 8. And so he said, let's do it. And he sat down and I played it for him. And he had to concede that even if he still thought many aspects of music were subjective, the things that we're talking about in class are things that we hear. Mm-hmm. We absolutely can trust our ears. And that's something students are really afraid to do. And I strive to make them not fear it. You can't control it. You will hear it. I promise you. Just quiet your brain and listen for a minute and then think.
You really honed in and you were like, you're thinking too much. What do you hear? And I think that's really important because not only would you ask those things and you tell us like, trust your ears, but even in class, I was lucky enough to have Mr. Kalkavich. He would consistently say, guys, listen, we're going to listen to this music. We're going to talk about it. We're going to listen to it again. We're going to continue to talk about it. Like I don't know, working through the Passion. How many
times did we listen to that thing? How many hours could we log listening to the Passion in that class alone?
Yeah, it was like, I remember if we had some Fridays, if we didn't meet with another class and sing, we would sit there for a solid hour and 10 minutes just listening. I guess what I'm trying to ask is what happens when you get a group of students together and we listen to something? What are we walking away with?
I mean, what's wonderful about St. John's is that it is different for every class. Somebody said something my sophomore year. It was toward the very beginning of the year, a student in my core, and core is, when you have all of your classes with someone, there's always going to be like 3 or 4 people that you have all your classes with. It's comforting, unless you don't like them, but you'll learn to like them. He was talking about something, how Zuckerkandl in the Sense of Music, we've got a bunch of scores in the back where we can actually read the notes of whatever piece he's talking about. He said, "So this is it, huh?" And he held up his score. He says, like, "This is literally what music is. This is all it is, these notes on the page." And I didn't say anything. And I've always regretted not saying something because that's wrong. The notes on the page are a representation. They're not the actual thing, which is why listening is so important. I was helping a student once analyze a section of Mozart's Ave Verum Corpus motet. It's a short 4-part harmony piece. The soprano has the melody and then everybody else is below it, and it's beautiful. He wrote it the final few months before he died, so it's about as mature as Mozart gets. She was analyzing this section, but she was doing it without listening to it because she thought, okay, I know the key of the piece, so really I should just be able to identify these chords and attach Roman numerals to them, and then I'll have analyzed it and that will be it. So she and I started going through it, and I was like, that's a lot of 3 chords. What do those even do? And she's like, I don't know. I've never really seen them. 3 chords don't really, in modern music, they exist. But, back then, it's like they didn't really have any dynamic significance. So I played it for her, and we were talking a little bit more and more about it. And I was like, yeah, you're listening for a 1 that just isn't there. Here's a D major chord. Does that sound related at all to this to you? And she went, no, I guess it doesn't. Because music is, for better or for worse, and it is really unfortunate if you can't hear or struggle to hear. My grandmother was deaf. You have to hear it, so I can't say for certain, what you're necessarily taking away from it, because in my experience, not only is every class different, but every person is different. And that's what's great about being a music assistant, right? Because it's not just that I get to take this wonderful class again, but this time I get paid. It's that I get to learn about how people think. That's what's so, so wonderful about it, that when I meet with every person for their audits, I can switch gears and I go, no, it actually makes more sense to this person if I talk about it this way. Whereas this person really latches onto dynamic qualities. And if I explain things in those terms, then they'll really get it. Maybe that's where music becomes a subjective thing. Not that music itself is subjective, but that people being subjects are. That's that. That's just kind of a thought.
I wanted to talk about, if we could, just about the sense of community that music has within our polity. Because we have Sicut sings every Wednesday in the Pendulum Pit. We welcome the new freshmen every year by singing Sicut Cervus to them. We have multiple different concerts for multiple different kinds of music all throughout the year. I wonder, and this is something I found that mostly once you take music, you really want to keep.
Yeah, it's like this. I wouldn't say this is a hard and fast rule, because everybody kind of has a different relationship with music. But it feels to me like if you're choosing not to sing, and at St. John's, that really is a choice. There are just so many opportunities, so many different choruses, and the fact that we do this regularly for our first 2 years, if you're not making music, that's a decision that you actively make. It is so much easier to do music at St. John's than not to. So if you're not doing music, then it's like you're making a choice to say, no, I don't want to be a part of this. And that's okay. Singing isn't for everyone. Not everybody likes to sing. For a long time, I didn't, and I still really struggle with it sometimes. But it's like we're all born having a musical instrument built in. Even speaking, there's something musical about it. The way that we recognize, oh, this person isn't done with their sentence yet, or this person has asked a question. I think those are all musical recognitions. It's not necessarily that we communicate with each other at Sicut sing, or in St. John's chorus, or even in freshman chorus, although I do think there is something unifying about commiserating every Thursday morning at 9 a.m. I think the unity comes from the fact that music is a part of the St. John's education, in the same way that Euclid is, I would even say, because you go back to Euclid every single year, or Pascal, or any of the big guys. You know, it's not a one-off thing that you do just to say that you have to do it. You know, like, it's something that you continue to think about. And whenever I reference music in class, it's not something people shut their brain off. It's something everybody wakes up and goes, oh yeah, I remember doing that, you know? Because music is necessarily a cultural thing, I think. A universal thing in that it's part of the human condition to make music, that man is a musical creature is an idea that the ancient Greeks had, and I think it's 100% the case.
Are you referring to like the Timaeus or something?
Yeah, the Timaeus is when Plato, or Socrates rather, spells that out. And of course, Socrates dies thinking, maybe I should have written more poetry or sang more songs. Those are some of his final thoughts. You know, I can't say that music at St. John's is any more special or magical than music anywhere else. It's such a small community that it really does take on a life of its own, especially since we don't just perform it. You know, and music for us isn't just something that pretty people do. We actually think about it. And that isn't to say that people at St. John's are smarter or better than anybody else, but having the opportunity to contend with music as something to be thought about instead of just listened to, or, you know, sitting back and watching somebody else do their thing and recognizing that is them and this is me. The way that we break down that barrier at St. John's is what I think makes music here unique, and what makes it unifying, that we are both the audience and the musician for ourselves and for each other. I think we all sing to one another, and I don't know very many other places that are like that.
Well, I don't want to take up too much more of your time, but I really do appreciate you taking the time and talking about this.
Thank you so much for asking me. It's really flattering.
Yeah, no, I thought it'd be great.
If we could but know where we are and whither we are tending, then we could better judge what to do and how to do it.